Hey folks, I wanted to do a little update on the state of the Arctic sea ice here in late June 2017. We're right around the summer solstice here, where it's June 19th, and I wanted to look at some of the latest worldview imagery just to kind of see where we are. Just my subjective assessment of how things look. Of course, there are all sorts of other things we could look at, but I like looking at worldview, so I think you can get a pretty good idea of where things stand. We're going to start kind of going clockwise, starting with the Chukchi Peninsula. If you look here, snow cover has pretty much, snowmelt is pretty much caught up with other years. There's a little bit left. This region was very late in terms of losing its snow cover compared to other years. It's more or less caught up by now, so that albedo effect, um, it's not going to have too much of a difference compared to other years going forward. Whatever melting momentum it has lost so far has already been basically factored into the surrounding melt. So going forward, pretty much on track with other years. One thing I did notice is this Chanskaya Bay here is melting as breaking up a lot faster than, for example, if we look at this was in 2016, you can see it's starting to break up, but it's still mostly covered with ice. Well, if we go to 2017, we see it's already in a much worse situation in 2017, which is surprising because this bay got a late start to its melt ponds, and yet it's already breaking up worse than 2016. Which, let's just take a look at a few other years. 2015, yeah, it was way behind. 2014, look at that. That's way behind where we are. 2013, still way behind, no breakup in sight. 2012, no breakup in sight. So even though it got a late start in 2017, it's quickly caught up and surpassed other years. Like I said, to catch up with the other years, there will, once the rest of the snow melts, will be totally caught up in this region. So 2017 has managed to pretty much equalize there. Let's move over to the East Siberian Sea here, and I notice what's really strange is the fast ice has been cut back way far towards the coast this year for 2017. Most years there's a lot more fast ice in this region. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so there's 2017, which, by the way, melt ponding is quickly progressing. In fact, even more advanced than in 2016, where this was still had pretty much kind of a grayish, whitish appearance. You can see 2017 much more bluish and some dark gray, and the fast ice is cut back even farther. Look at that, even that's breaking up pretty near the coast already. Even these other years, 2015 was, well, yeah, quite a bit of melt ponding, but not as cut back as far as 2017. Not nearly the activity in 2014. 2013 was interesting, also cut back pretty far. A lot of melt ponding and a large bite in the Laptev. But of course, 2013 had other issues in the, when we get to the Beaufort, we'll see, had some issues there. 2012, interesting how 2012, most places was way ahead, but here it's actually way behind. Funny enough. So 2017 looking pretty advanced there. There is a little bit of snow cover still on the coast, but this is also quickly caught up with other years. You know, I'm not sure how much of a difference this is making now, because if you look at this whole area is going to show up on all of your products, all of your graphs as still technically being 100% snow covered. But you can see its albedo is not the same as a purely snow covered area. There's a lot of brown showing through, and it's soaking up a lot of sunlight now, and especially now around the solstice when um, you know, they're getting 24-hour sunlight here. This will melt away very quickly now, and pretty much caught up with the other years on the land area. And then, like I said, here this looks really bad here in the East Siberian Sea. Now, as far as the Laptev Sea goes, um, yeah, there's a lot of melt ponding. Let's take a look at other years. I'd say even more melt ponding than 2016. 2016 did have some melt ponding. You can see kind of a grayish, bluish tint, but yeah, 2017 is worse. Despite the fact that 2016, you can see, has been ahead in terms of the snowmelt on land, and yet somehow it's been able to equalize on the ocean. Not sure how it's been able to do that. Let's look at some other years here. 2015, a lot of even though a lot of this is obscured by clouds, you can see a lot of melt ponding there. A lot of blues showing up. 2014. 2014 was the year of the Laptev bite. You see how big it's already gotten, how bad of shape it is here. So 2014, the main thing it had going for it was the Laptev melt. 2013 also looked pretty bad. 2012, still pretty white. Funny thing about 2012 is had a huge melt in the Pacific, but if you look at these areas on the Atlantic here, or on the Russian coast, it wasn't quite so impressive. Now, it did have a lot of melt on land. You see, that's pretty far advanced. That snow melt on land. It's definitely had that going for it, and also some breakup here along the coast. Let's compare that. Yeah, we don't see that there. We do see a little bit of that in 2014. Hard to tell for 2015. I don't think, no, there's no breakup in 2015. 2016, no breakup as far as I can tell. Nope. What about 2017? No, I don't see any. So 2012 was definitely ahead on that. Now we do see some breakup over here, some of the fast ice. Like I said, 2017 still catching up in terms of the snow melt. Although it's not really that far behind now from 2016. Pretty similar now. As far as that's concerned. You know, all these years are pretty similar now. They always have a little bit of snow left over. 2012. Pretty similar with all the 2015 is probably the snowiest looking of all these. And here's the area where 2017 is really lagging behind. Still a lot of snow, although you can really see this is thinning out. It's absorbing a lot of sunlight at this point. There's a lot of brown peeking through. This is going to be gone in a matter of days at this point. So you know, it's quickly catching up to other years. You can see, though, look how much greener that is. Not just the lack of snow melt, or lack of snow. You can see there's still a little bit of snow here along the coast in 2016. But the thing I notice is how much greener these areas are over here, which that shows you how much of a head start, how much earlier the snow melt had started over in these areas. The fact that it's already green here by mid-June 2016. So no doubt about it, 2017 is late in this area of the world. Now this ice is going to melt out anyways, so it's not the biggest deal, but it's going to hold back how much the water temperatures can really heat up in the Kara Sea, which you know, might retard some of the ice melt, I should say, in neighboring adjacent seas such as the Laptev. Um, and by the way, what did some of these other years look like? So we got 2016, 2015. A lot of snow, a lot of cloud cover. Hard to tell. 2014 still quite a bit of snowpack. 2013 very cloudy. Oh yeah, still a lot of snow cover. So it's not totally unprecedented. 2012 had a very early melt in the Kara and the neighboring coasts and the snowpack here. So 2012 and 2016 were similar in that respect. 2017 definitely not. But 2017 snowmelt isn't totally unprecedented. It's just it is quite a bit behind years like 2012 and 2016 in the Kara region. All right, so let's skip on over to the Canadian Arctic archipelago. It's 2012, very early snowmelt and a lot of blue. Look at all that melt ponding there by the 19th. Still quite a bit of ice in the Hudson though, but a lot of melt ponding up here. You notice there's still a lot of snow. Funny enough, there's snow down here on these land masses, but up here it's really already melted out, which is kind of interesting. You'd think this would take longer, but in 2012 it was snowmelt here in the high archipelago was already outpacing the snowmelt down here, kind of the Baffin Island, Labrador kind of area. Whereas let's compare other years. 2013 still very snow covered, something that held 2013 back, where the Canadian Arctic archipelago never did melt out, if I remember right. The Northwest Passage never did open up that year. 2014 still very snow covered up here. Very strong melt ponding down here, but up here in the high archipelago still very white. Now a lot of melt in the Baffin area, Baffin Island, but a lot of ice still in Hudson. 2015, quite a bit of melt on the Baffin Island, and it's quite a bit of blue. I don't know, it's kind of in the middle, I'd say. Because there are some blues and some melt up here and here, but not as aggressive farther south. Still see a lot of snow down here. There's a lot of snow still in Labrador for 2015. So kind of somewhere in the middle. 2016. 2016 had a pretty aggressive melt. Look at that. So you see Banks Island's already completely melted out. You know, up here near the Naras, Lincoln Sea land is already melted out. Now Labrador still had some snow cover. Baffin Island still had quite a bit of snow, but pretty aggressive melt. See, look at that. I think that's, what is that, Victoria Island, I've heard. You know, pretty much totally melted out, and lots of blues by this point. Now what do we see for 2017? Can't quite, not all the imagery is in for the 19th yet, but you do see there's some melt on Baffin Island. Labrador is pretty much gone. Hudson Bay is really going quick. It looks in really bad shape. Should be a little bit ahead of schedule this year. Some melt up by the Naras and Lincoln Sea. And of course we know that the Lincoln Sea itself is complete rubble this year, which is unprecedented. But when it comes to actual melt, like up in the archipelago, yeah, Banks Island, Victoria Island, there's definitely melt there, and there's a little bit of bluish tinge if you look closely at places, but you definitely don't see the land areas melting out like you have in previous year. Like some of these islands, look how much, look at that, look at Ellesmere Island. whatever this is. Still quite delayed for 2017. So it'd be interesting to see. You can kind of see this in what is this? Either the Great Slave Lake or Great Bear Lake. I forget which one. Um, you can kind of see how much progressed 2016 was already compared to 2017. So 2017 is definitely behind a little bit. Here, I'm actually, with how white this is still, there's very little melt ponding. You'll see how blue it is in 2016. Very little melt ponding at this point, although funny enough, the fast ice has dislodged farther back for 2017. So I'm still not quite sure if the Northwest Passage will really open up for 2017, because look how white that is. I mean, the whole question this year is how much of a difference, or how big of a factor is melt ponding compared to ice thickness? All right, because you see signs everywhere that the ice is definitely thinner in 2017. You see this fast ice breaking up much more quickly, receding much more farther inland. Same thing down here, I think. You see the fast ice is retreated much farther here too on this other end of the Northwest Passage, and yet the rest of it looks a lot whiter. It's much less melt ponding. Same thing with that Chonskaya Bay, or in the East Siberian Sea too. Much less fast ice, which tells me that the fast ice must be thinner up here if it's already breaking off and receding much farther back. So it's going to be a question of these competing tendencies of fewer melt ponds, but also thinner ice, which will be the decisive factor. We will see. Now, as far as Beaufort goes, pretty similar, I think, to previous years. Let's use the 18th here. 2016, a little bit more advanced melt near the coast, although I think 2017 has a little bit more open water. Let's see if we can get a... Yeah, 2016 had a little bit more open water up here. What about 2015? Very much delayed, yeah. Although more snow melt, very solid. Actually, all these years by this point, there's pretty much complete snow melt on the land of Alaska and Mackenzie Delta by this point. 2014 looks very white. I don't know if that's just part of that's cloud cover, but also some of it's still residual snow cover. So 2014 was way behind. Like I said, 2014 had a gangbusters Laptev melt, but not so much here on the Pacific side. 2013 is a weird year because had a very slow start to the land snowmelt. Then the land snowmelt really caught up quickly, and you see, a lot of snowmelt on land, at least at the lower latitude, and some melt ponding, but there was no opening of the Beaufort even by mid-June, which really led it to have a lot of ice left over by September. And of course, we all know 2012 was the monster year of the Pacific melt. And, its Beaufort situation is pretty similar to 2016, 2017. I almost kind of wonder how much of the difference came from this early, because look at this melt out of the snowpack, the land snow here in the Canadian Arctic archipelago, and all this melt ponding here. I wonder how much of this fed into, the disappearance of ice here in the Beaufort later on that summer, because this is really what strikes me as the big difference for 2012, and we definitely don't see that in 2016, or 2017 rather. Still very white in 2017. So that might hold back 2017's melt quite a bit. All right, so last thing we'll look at is this kind of overall hue of the Arctic basin and overall dispersion. You see, 2017 looks pretty white still. Not a lot of melt ponding. There's a little bit up here. You can kind of tell it's a grayer tinge. There's a little bit of dispersion. I think 2016 probably had. You see the dispersion already is getting into this part of the Arctic basin, whereas it's not quite as much for 2017. So 2016 was slightly ahead there. 2015, not much dispersion, although you can definitely tell some melt ponding going on kind of in a band right along here. 2014, aside from the Laptev, of course, not a lot going on. There's a little bit of melt ponding here, but not a lot of dispersion, not a lot of melt ponding here on the Pacific side, which held 2014's melt back. 2013, yeah, no dispersion really whatsoever. You can see the band of melt ponding really getting going right around here, that bluish tinge, but it really was missing out on the dispersion that it needed to get its melt going. And of course 2012, large Beaufort hole, although not really a lot of, you see a little bit of dispersion opening up. There's maybe a slight bluish tinge all around, but really hard to see what really set its melting season off, aside from this super early melt out of the Canadian Arctic archipelago. So we'll see how that evolves. Right now 2017 is way behind on that, so that could be a decisive influence, keeping the ice in the Beaufort around longer. We will see. So areas I would say where 2017 is really behind are still this here area right here in Canada, Carc coast. Otherwise, 2017 is very much similar to other years, if not slightly out ahead, such as East Siberian Sea, Laptev's pretty good melt, Chukchi's pretty good melt. So, it's a bit of 2017 is ahead in some areas, but also behind in others. So it'll be interesting to see how this melt season plays out, and how much of a factor that lack of melt ponding in some areas and lack of land snow melt will really be, and if that will be compensated by the thinner sea ice to begin with, as suggested by some of this fast ice cutting back so quickly. So we will see in the months ahead. Until then, see you later.